This is episode 56 of the Gauntlet podcast. My name is Jason.
My name is Steve.
And I'm Rich.
Awesome. Rich, I gather that you got a chance to play a special game of Dread at Camp Nerdly this weekend. How'd it go?
Oh, it went really well. What was funny was it was one of those where what we probably would have played might not have been awesome because it ended up the pitch for it is exactly what was going to be a trial and terror game. They were both like, murder mystery at the camp, right? And Paul, who came up with the Dread pitch, was like, no, I can't copy. So he scrambled, and the night before the game, he came up with this concept. The idea behind this game of Dread, it was set in a forest, but the player characters were animals. More like Warren, less like Mouse Guard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was a crow, and we could have chosen a deer, but there were only 4 of us, a fox, a squirrel, and the last one was a rabbit, which is what I played. What was really cool about it is that I found that Dread, to me, in my experience, is similar to my experience with Fiasco, in that everybody comes in with a mindset of that one-shot mindset, like, I'm going to make a disposable character. Like in Fiasco, I will make a character that is going to be funny, and I'm going to be funny for all of my Fiasco. I'm funny, ha-ha. And in Dread, it's like, my guy is totally going to die. I'm just going to look for the most amazing way to die. Ha-ha. And both of those games were wholly unsatisfying for me. What was different about this one was that not only was the possibility of death of your character on the line for a pull, but we went in with the idea that, okay, these are animals, but it's kind of similar to the do you ever seen the movie Homeward Bound with Milo and Otis?
Yeah.
It's actual footage of 2 animals. Wait. And then a voiceover.
I think those are separate things. Isn't there Homeward Bound and then Milo and Otis? I think so.
You're probably totally right.
They're the same genre of film, right?
I know what you're talking about, even if
Yeah, so it's footage of 2 animals on a trip and doing things, and then there's voiceovers to give them their personality. That was the pitch here. And the idea was that their natural base instincts were flight, right? Because the threat was forest fire. So what was on the table, literally with the Jenga tower for Dread, was that if the tower fell, it may not be that your character instantly dies. It could be that they give in to their base instincts and flee. They're no longer trying to help out the other members of their little group. I liked that because there was often in Dread, you'll set up a mystery, right, and there'll be some PvP, there'll be some secrets and the like, but that really was not the case here. These were 4 likable characters that were very interesting, who had a reason to stick together, but there was a threat that they may just bail. That was kind of a neat aspect because then we were fighting to stick together as a team, and there were moments where we were helping each other out. And due to the teamwork, narratively, we occasionally missed pulls because someone could help the poor little rabbit fly across a little ravine thing that he had to jump off of a tree. And so that was very intense. Another aspect that I liked was we all got to pick who our voice actor was. Rob Bull was one of the players, and he and his girlfriend, it was her second RPG ever.
Whoa.
And she was amazing, but she played Rooks, the crow, who was voiced by Tim Roth. And
Nice.
Yep.
And I played Snickersnack, the rabbit, who was voiced by Seth Rogen. So it was tonally, they were slightly different. There was a lot of intense moments, and it was the most I'd ever been engaged in playing Dread, because often Dread to me is just a really fun Jenga game with some role-playing around it. But this was a game that I cared about every single pull because we were always pulling for each other. Pulling, literally. It was fantastic. It was a really amazing game of Dread, and I have begged Paul to type it up, and hopefully he's going to make it available, and I will make sure that if he does, that we'll share it here in the notes for this podcast, because it's the best Dread ever.
Cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that sounds really fun. You guys were playing at, like, Camp Nerdly is literally camp, right?
Oh, yes. Camp Nerdly is up in Prince William Forest, Virginia. It is cabins, rustic cabins, and there are some larger cabins where activities could be held. This used to be a training ground. Like, there's an infirmary with just cots. And then there are larger cabins, which are craft cabins and the like. And so there will be non-people living in them cabins where the games are held with big, nasty benches and no air conditioning. And yeah.
Did you guys have a semi-stable surface for the Jenga tower?
Paul is a smart guy. He actually scouted out the best bench in all of the camp, and that table was where we played the best bench, the best table in all of the camp. That's what we played on. It was super stable. Yeah. Although there was a moment where someone like belly bumped the table, and we all kind of, okay, we're good.
I once played a game of The Final Girl where we were each cute animals in a forest, and the killer was a hunter and his dogs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And it was gruesome and awesome. I was really into it. Cool. Is there anything else you want to say about it, Rich?
No.
All right, cool. Steve, I gather you have played probably one of the worst board games, but also one of my favorite board games, Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Yes. Let me consult my notes. What did I describe it as? Yes, the Ameritrashiest of Ameritrash games.
It's really bad. It's almost objectively awful. I mean, like it's the closest a game can get to being objectively terrible. But do continue.
But it's playable.
It's
so,
great. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's above that line at the very least. Yeah, I've played 3 times now, twice this past week, and so Betrayal at House on the Hill is a very luck-based, but yeah, also in my experience, very fun game where players take turns sort of exploring a haunted or creepy mansion, and by exploring, you're creating it in real time. You're laying down tiles whenever you go to a new room and randomly seeing what room that is. And most of those tiles will have you drawing a card and, dealing with whatever bizarre, creepy event or item or omen pops up. And after a certain time, you'll be triggering what the game calls a haunt. And after the haunt gets triggered, everything changes. Usually there's a traitor of some sort, but there's always going to be... this is the point in the horror movie when our heroes realize what's going on, or at least realize there's something creepy happening that's after them, right? That's the haunt. And there's a lot of replayability in there because I think there's at least like 30 or 40 of them. I don't remember.
First
I tried to
edition
look
was
up
50.
the number, I couldn't find
Yeah.
it. Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
And after that you try to deal with that. The players have their own, or the heroes, whoever's not a traitor, have their own booklet that tells them how to win. The traitor has their booklet that tells them how to win, and everybody has secret info. And like I said, I've played 3 times now. I've been the traitor every single time. So this is now reverse BSG for me, the Battlestar Galactica board game. I've played like 7 times, never been a Cylon.
Now you're always the traitor, right?
Right, I'm just always the traitor. What's interesting is even though I've seen 3 different scenarios involving the traitor, they're all fairly different. They all operate differently. One of them, there was a secret traitor. One of them, there was an open traitor from the get-go. Steve is the traitor now. One of them, there's no traitor until a certain point, at which point, if somebody's unlucky, they could become a traitor. And it's interesting that, maybe it's just my luck. Maybe there's only a certain number of ways things can operate, I guess. But it's been very different every time. But I lost miserably the first game I played this past weekend. And the second time, I was in the process of losing miserably and made a decision on my last round where I was pretty, I realized I'm going to die, but hey, I can at least kill 2 of you guys. So I just did that. And then after the game was over, we're like, oh, it was still fun. You guys have fun? And then one of the other players was reading through my booklet and realizing, oh no, you actually won, Steve. You won.
That's a classic Betrayal at House on the Hill story right there.
Yep, there we go. If you kill 2 of the other players, it doesn't say you have to live. You kill 2 of us, you win. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take it.
Sweet.
Yeah, I mean, I was happy enough just murdering 2 out of 3 of them, but I'll take an actual victory from it. Yeah, it's such a random game. like every game I've played, somebody ends up with, oh, look at all these special items and weapons. I don't know what to do with them all. And someone on the opposite end of the table is like, well, I don't have any cards in front of me. I hope we're on the same team. Eventually.
I had the first edition of that game, which I purchased and was playing like years ago, like 10 years ago or something, right? And it was so bad. I mean, like, it was so bad. There were 50 scenarios. We've played through, I would say we played it probably like 15 to 20 times. Half the time, the scenarios did not work. They were either missing cards, or the floors, the rooms you need to go into were mislabeled, or the triggering condition was not possible. Like there was so many like bad. It was so bad. They made the eventual second edition, which I hope like fix some of that stuff. But that first run was really, really, really bad. Things were mislabeled. It was horribly organized. It was just a gross game. But we always had fun with it, though. It's one of those like really, really rare games that are just so terrible, but you still are having fun with it because its terribleness was part of the charm. You know, it was almost it was almost like a B-grade horror movie in a way, which is what the game is trying to emulate, right? Terrible, you know, like technically terrible movie that you still enjoy. So that's always been my feeling about Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Yeah, I have the second edition. I didn't encounter any playability issues.
I would imagine they smoothed a lot of that out. Boy, that first edition was rough as hell. Like, there's no way they play tested half those scenarios in there. I mean, there was just no way. It is what it is. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
No, that's it.
All right, cool. I wanted to just talk real briefly about a favorite subject of ours around here, Dungeon World flags versus bonds.
Hooray!
Yay, I know. I got a chance to play a game of Dungeon World with Gauntlet UK over this past weekend while you were playing awful board games and Rich was at Camp Nerdly. I was playing Dungeon World again with Gauntlet UK. Great sessions. Two of my very favorite Dungeon World sessions. They were so good. And one of the things I really loved about them was how we did flags. Flags like really, really like came alive for me. Like, I'd been kind of seeing their potential as we've been using them, but man, they really lit up for me in a really good way this time. And everyone agreed. Like, that was a big glowing part of the sessions that we all loved. So, but what we did a little differently to make sure that like we were hitting the flags and that the flags were kind of being incorporated into the game in a really salient way, we actually just had like more of a meta conversation about the flags as we played. So in the beginning of the second session especially, we just kind of went around the table and said, okay, hey, this is the flag that, based off what's going on right now, this is the flag that I think would be really interesting to hit. So like, if you guys want to try to hit this one, I think this is the one. In the middle of the game, you know, we check the flags every now and then. We'd have a little flag break, you know, bio break / flag break. And two players would be like, oh, this might be a great chance to do this flag. Maybe we could have a scene where we do that. And we'd be like, okay, yeah. And so then we would do it. It worked really well. I was worried that like being really table talky about it would kind of ruin some kind of immersion or whatever. But that was a bullshit concern. Like, it wasn't a concern at all. It led to some really, really nice scenes, and the players loved it. Like, the players were really, really into it. So that's it. I just wanted to say, continuing to have good luck with flags, and I can't wait to keep perfecting how we use them. So
yeah, that's really cool. I'm looking forward to us being in a place where we have nailed down like flag best practices.
Yeah.
So we can, you know, put together something that some text that it's easy to reference the way you have with like.
Well, yeah, because Rob's original blog post about it is pretty sparse, right? I mean, there's not much there,
right.
You know. So it's been nice. It's been fun though to kind of figure out like the best way to make them work. So I'm pretty into it.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to say about it though. Rich, I'm really excited about this. Rich, tell me about Threadbare.
Okay, Threadbare is currently on Kickstarter. It is a new, surprise, powered by the apocalypse game.
Well, hold on just one second. I want to stop you. Last week, you made a point of saying that you were ready to move beyond powered by the apocalypse games, and now I see that you're back.
I don't recall that exactly. I think I said that on Gauntlet City Limits, I was trying to force myself out of the fuzzy, happy, powered by the apocalypse embrace.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Just, you know, occasionally dipping my toe into the deep end of all the other games, those other
non-powered by the apocalypse games.
No, those powered by something else than an apocalypse.
PBSE.
Exactly. Powered by other engine. Threadbare is by Stephanie Bryant. It is currently on Kickstarter. The pitch is a stitch punk RPG. I really like what we were playing was the beta rule set available for backers. Dave, who is in a game group with Kelly Vanda and Arnold Cassell, he came with them to Camp Nerdly. It was his first Camp Nerdly, and he wanted to give this thing a shot. So we had the playbooks. There are 3 different playbooks themselves, basic rules, and some GM notes. Very loose amount of information. It felt like a beta Kickstarter, or kind of a beta playtest type thing. But the kernel of it is really fascinating. So the Stitch Punk is kind of like, Little Big Planet or the movie 9, if it gives you an idea there. And so the 3 playbooks are you could play a softie, which is a flexible toy, like mostly like a Raggedy Ann doll. Yeah, exactly. And you could play a mecha with 2 Ks because it's more awesome that way. A mecha is a plastic toy, right? And then the last choice is a sock. Which is kind of weird. I'm like, you could play a toy, or a Christmas stocking. However, while that is a little bit on the weird side, the idea that you're just a lonely sock is pretty awesome.
Well, that's pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, and Kelly didn't want to play a Christmas stocking. She played a Halloween sock named Ghost, which was spooky. Another neat aspect of the game is that there are 3 modes of play, almost like ratings, that go from the most childish type where the GM cannot introduce any conflict that can only be solved by violence, that the preference is that it not be solved with violence, all the way up to the dented version. They all have this, it's like fluffy, and I don't know, there's different names for them, but the more adult version of dented, which we chose just to kind of push it in that angle with the idea, as Dave told us, it's a little bit like Toy Story and a little bit like the movie Human Centipede with some kind of body horror issues going on. Because the way that this game works is in Stitch, it's not just Stitch Punk just as an idea, right? Stitching is a thing. You don't really gain new moves, but you have the ability to basically specifically move to jerry-rig or to add on to yourself and stitch in a new thing. Like you can get a custom move because the mecha big plastic GoBot toy has found a rocket launcher, and he's basically spot welded it onto his shoulder, and so then you and the GM will come up with rocket launcher move, and that's how you
Nice.
you upgrade yourself. Now, true to Human Centipede body horror style, the Lonely Sock Ghost, we needed to get around this weird nuclear sludgy thing in our big Barbie yacht, which my guy called Barbecue to make it more awesome. Sock decided she needed to stitch herself into the dragon kite that we were carrying, and they became like this weird Frankenstein-y combo. It was a little spooky. And she wasn't lonely anymore, and the poor little dragon kite was subsumed by her personality. A little weird. But it was a pretty great little game. I like the moves. There's no real, like, I'm going to go hit a thing move, because I was listening to, there's an episode of Jankcast where she's interviewed. It's really good. You should check it out. I had not heard that podcast, but I could see within the beta playtest rules that we were using that it really does not want violence to be your first option or even an easy option to go to. There's a make a friend move. There are options to fix things rather than go shoot it up, which was neat. In response, I played Jablonski, who was basically like the Fonz, but a soft puppet. And he had a thumbs up. I'm giving you guys a thumbs up. That was one of his. Instead of wound levels, you have like aspects of your character that will get torn up when you get hurt or broken and the like. And he had one chest hair, and at one point he had to sacrifice his one chest hair, which made him really sad, guys. You don't even know that one chest hair was good stuff. So all in all, I love the kernel of this idea, and I want to see it come to life. I want to see what the next iteration is, because I know she's making some changes and updating it and tweaking it and twisting it. Been working on it for like 4 years, so this is kind of cool. I want it to see the light of day.
Awesome.
So you said there's only 3 playbooks, right?
There are. Oh, great question. Thanks for asking about that. So there are 3 overall playbooks, but then there are 3 bodies within those playbooks. So the Mecha, Mekka, Paul played a Teddy Ruxpin. Oh my god, so creepy. Seriously, that Teddy Ruxpin was messed up. That was one of the options, which is a thing that takes batteries. And then another body type under Mecha was there's an army of us, or there's so many of us. Like you could play a whole bunch of army men. That's your character, right? Mm-hmm. And someone played We Are Lego. Patty played We Are Lego, which was just a whole bunch of Legos.
I like that joke.
We Are Lego attacked with her little plastic Chinese throwing stars, because she had Ninjago. It was pretty great. Not really effective, but really great. Oh, and the last bit that I thought was really neat is that in that idea that let's not have a whole lot of combat, the idea, if combat happens, it is done in a montage. So it is a very team-oriented thing, and you describe your kind of one move, and then it's resolved very quickly, and it's done in some kind of cinematic way, and then you move on.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, nice and appropriate.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
No, I think Threadbare is worth your time. We should definitely throw a link into the show notes for the Kickstarter.
All right, sounds good. Steve, tell me about Ugtect or Ugtech. Ugtech?
Ugtect.
Ugtect. Okay.
Right. It's possible I've talked about this like a year plus ago, but
it sounds whatever.
Familiar. It's been
a while.
Yeah. Ugtect is a very stupid but quite fun party game, more or less, where you divide up into 2 teams, and each team, everybody is cave people, and each team is being directed by one person who's looking at a card, and the card has almost floor plans, but like architectural plans, that they're trying to convey, because they're cavemen, via gestures and ridiculous cave people language, very rudimentary words, and they're trying to get their teammates to construct the image they have on their card. So if I'm trying to say, this isn't going to be exact, but if I'm trying to say, okay, I need you to pick up the white cylindrical block and stand it upright, and then I need you to grab the yellow triangular block and put it on top, then this involves like a tilting of my head in order to get them to figure out, grab the white block, and then I need to use the word for you take, and then the word for you put, and then the word for higher, I think, in case they try and just lay it down on the ground. What? No, a gungu. Oh, and if you're just trying to repeat things for emphasis, watch out, because using a word one time, like manungu, I think, means front. Manungu means back. So don't worry, though, because there are other ways to convey what you mean. Namely, you have inflatable caveman clubs. And so if somebody's doing something incorrectly, you smack them on the head twice with your caveman club. If they're doing it correctly, well, you only have so many tools to work with. You smack them on the head once. If you screw up, say, a gungu instead of a gungu, then you smack yourself on the head to indicate you made a mistake, and then correct yourself. The whole time, you're not allowed to speak English. When you, as the Ugtect, are confident that your team has correctly assembled the structure, you say Ugtect and smack the table 3 times with your club, hopefully not knocking anything over. And then the other team, alternating between silence and grunts, takes the card and inspects your structure. And if they approve, if they can't claim that you did it wrong, then they just and you get the points on the card. First team to 10 wins, and it's utterly ridiculous. We played through 4 rounds, I think, giving everybody on each team a chance to be the Ugtect once, including the we were playing with my friend's kid, like 9 years old or so. So yeah, we ranged in age from probably about 9 to 35, and everybody had a ton of fun. So I can't have a recommendation much higher than that for a silly party game.
Yeah, for sure. Cool, awesome. Is there anything you want to say about it?
No, I don't think so. I wish I had more frequent excuses to smack people on the head with things, but I don't.
I think it's to smack them on the head when they've done well that amuses me.
I have
once.
I have lots of in my life just excuses to smack people on the head, but you just can't do that, right? It's just it's not for lack of
socially
of
acceptable excuses. Yeah.
Cool. I got a chance to play The Dig RPG by Derek Kamal several weeks ago, actually during my break from the podcast. The Dig is a game, fairly mechanics light story game where you play dwarves that are undertaking a venture within their dwarven home. And so a venture could be something like excavating a certain tunnel, or building a pub, or crafting a fabulous axe, for the Lord, or something like that, right? It's a pretty straightforward game mechanically. You have a pretty simple chart-based character creation process, which relies on, there's kind of like a pre-established fictional world that Derek has. I believe he's written some fiction in this world of dwarves, and so this game is kind of like a spin-off of that. There's a lot of really good sort of background fiction there, which you can use, but we didn't really have time to get into that, and we were still able to play the game just fine because everyone kind of understands the basic dwarf fantasy trope, right? It's a pretty straightforward thing. It was interesting because you get a chance to tell a story that you don't often get to tell in a role-playing game, even though we see the classic mining and building dwarves a lot in RPGs. We don't usually get to play the dwarf until they've left Stone Top or whatever the name of their home is to go travel with the adventuring company, right? There's not,
right.
You don't often get how do the dwarves live and what do they do inside, their dwarven halls. And so that was pretty cool. The mechanics are a pretty straightforward kind of scene framing with dice-based conflict resolution divided up over these 3 rounds. So you have scenes within these 3 rounds: the material round, the social round, and the craft round. And each of those rounds, you define some goals for whatever your adventure is. And you're trying to, you play out scenes to try to make progress on these goals. And then if you achieve the goals, then it increases the chance that your venture is going to be successful. We had a bit of an issue with the mechanics in the sense that it felt a little easy. We never actually failed a roll, and we only had one roll where there was kind of a complication. So the outcomes on these die rolls range from utter failure to extravagant success, right? And then everything in the middle. And we had success or higher every time except for once, which we had a complication. And so that was a little disappointing because I felt it did feel a little easy, and we were just kind of burning through the venture pretty easily. But that said, we still had a really good time. I think it could have just been we just got lucky on our rolls. That could totally be it. One thing the game does though is if you do fail a roll, if let's say it's my scene and I'm doing the roll, if one of my companions is in the scene or even if they're not in the scene, I think they can actually step in and basically narrate how they're helping, and then their help will almost always, or at least in our game it always made the roll a success. So
okay.
Yeah, so we were having trouble getting failures and complications, but it didn't really take away from the fact that we had a pretty good story. Our venture was to set up a tavern just outside the dwarven home where non-dwarves would be passing through, and the idea behind the tavern was we were going to give elves and humans and halflings the classic dwarven tavern drinking experience, right? So think Texas Roadhouse, how you go into Texas Roadhouse and it's supposed to be Texas, right? But people from Texas know that's not what Texas is like at all, right? And so it's kind of the Disneyland version of the dwarven, drinking halls. That's what our tavern was. And so our goals involved finding grizzled old war veterans who would be willing to like just sit in our tavern and drink and like play out like them like telling each other stories about fighting orcs and goblins and shit, you know. We had to craft a dwarven nog that was like authentic dwarven nog. I'm using quote fingers. Authentic dwarven nog that was like not too strong for the non-dwarven palate, you know, like something the non-dwarven palate could down. So it was fun. It was a very comic game. I don't know if Derek intends for it to be funny, but ours was. So I consider that a success. We were laughing a lot. It's a pretty straightforward game. It's probably worth picking up just for no other reason than there's a lot of really good like background fiction going on there that you can use for like any game, which dwarves are going to be a part of. So yeah, it was cool.
Sounds similar in structure to, what is it, Goblin Quest. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, except, yeah, I mean, I guess, like, in the sense that, like, the goblins are trying to just do a thing. Yeah, I guess so. It was, yeah, I guess it was pretty similar to that. I guess that's not a bad comparison, actually. Except you don't have multiple dwarves that, you know, are dying.
Right,
you know, like,
okay.
one by one. You have just, like, your one dwarf. And your dwarf, like, comes from one of several different dwarven clans within this pre-established fiction, and they have several different sort of crafts or trades, again coming from this established fiction, which affect your stats and stuff like that. So we didn't get into all the sort of background fiction of it, but I was kind of reading through it afterwards, and it was pretty cool. I liked it. But yeah, The Dig, pretty awesome. And I think it's got really nice cover art. That's one thing that's really striking about it. The cover art on the PDF is really, really sweet. It's probably some of the best I've seen. So yeah, I don't think else to say about it, though.
Cool.
Cool.
All right, well, Rich, tell us about your Kmart game, your Monster Hearts Kmart game.
Monster Hearts Kmart! The inspiration for this Monster Hearts setting is from a post I saw on Google Plus a while back, a few months ago, where there was someone who had worked at Kmart in the late 80s, early 90s. I don't know. Have either of you guys been, like, did you ever go to Kmart back in the day?
Like when I was a little kid, yeah.
Yeah, same.
Okay, sure. Good enough. The guy who would work there, he saved the tape recordings, like the tapes that were sent to be played over the intercoms, and digitized them all and put them up on archive.org. And
Whoa.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And they are just an amazing time capsule. I also, so as I was listening to it, I was like, man, you know, I remember when I worked retail, and I remember a lot of the political situations and some of the frustrations of being stuck in a place. I'm like, you know, this wasn't that unlike high school. Wouldn't that be an interesting idea for a Monster Hearts game? So
I just love that your mind went there, because it's definitely not what I would have thought of, but I'm into it.
I try to gamify everything. Why not? So I did some research to grab some hairstyles. I went on the Wikipedia to look at what the most popular movies from the summer of 1992 was. Got a lot of clothing. Pinterest. Jason, you're right. Pinterest.
Very good.
The searching for Pinterest for 90s stuff, really good. Made these bizarre little collage handouts, and even broke out the old laminator and laminated those suckers up. And then I even downloaded some Kmart job applications that happened to be online and kind of made them into tent cards for people to put in front of themselves. And I also even bought name badges just because, you know, that just feels kind of retail, right? Dude, if I'd had unlimited budget, I would have gotten the red vests.
You should have aprons, I know, yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, the little red vests from the 90s. And then, you know, I looked at, in the past, I've talked about Monster Hearts. One of the things I have is, like, this is a really
Have you?
cool...
That doesn't ring a bell.
I've only played it a few times this year. But one of my complaints about Monster Hearts has been the experience of, hey, this is a really cool, tight setting and situation we set up in school. This is really fun. Everybody plays there for about half an hour. Then they all run off to the woods and have sex and kill each other by turning into monsters. And the game devolves very quickly. So I thought, you know, if I chose the right kind of skins to exist in this retail setting, maybe that would change. So I went through all of the skins and others, not just the base skins, but Skins for the Skinless by Topher Gurkey, and the second skins, what is out of the Kickstarter from Jackson Tegu's second skins from 2013, what of it he's done. and I looked at those skins all together for some selections, and I cherry-picked the ones that were less monstrous. And I said, wow, I don't even know how a Sasquatch is going to deal with a Minotaur versus a Queen. This could be a horrible train wreck. It turns out that it was not a train wreck. It was pretty delicious.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, we had
strong endorsement.
I know it was not at all a train wreck. So this was Becca, which is Rob Bowles' girlfriend. They both sat in, and it was her very first RPG was Monster Hearts, and I'm like, oh, no pressure here. But luckily, Rob's Shane, who is hey Shane, he listens to the Gauntlet. I hope you're listening to this one, Shane. Shane has run quite a bit of Monster Hearts, so he was my kind of backup in case I didn't explain a rule quite right, which is super great. We sat down, made characters, probably spent too long in character creation, to be honest with you. But the whole time I had that Kmart music going on in the background. and what's great is it's not just, music. It's also some original, like, easy listening stuff, occasional 90s pop, and the interruptions for blue light specials or announcements about things that are going on in the automotive or head down to the eye care center, all these things that really gave a sense of space. Oh, and the last thing is, of course, I found a store layout, and so it was our map for the game. Well, suffice to say, the tonal changes for Monster Hearts made it a lot less monster, a little bit more heart, and the cuckoo ended up walking out of the store at the very end, so he walked out with the guy he had a crush on, and that was our cute little ending of
Cool.
the Attention Kmart Shoppers game of Monster Hearts.
Awesome. That's neat. I like now. So you asked, you asked us on, maybe it was on Super Friends or maybe it was after an SMC game.
It was
and we tried to talk you out of it, but I'm kind of glad you went with your gut and did it, because it sounds like it was fun. So
well, that feedback was really helpful because you guys talked about, well, if I'm playing a werewolf, I'm going to want to do my werewolf stuff.
Right. Yeah.
That was what took me down the path of well,
choosing.
if I adjust the skins to where they make sense within the context, maybe it'll be more fun for people to kind of live there.
It's one of those things that I think PBTA GMs should really, really take a hard look at when they're getting ready to run a new campaign. Like, do I need all of these playbooks? Do I need all of these skins?
Right.
Is there a collection that's going to better fit the tone that I'm going for? I find that that's a very, very helpful thing to do in a lot of these games.
Yeah. Note to everyone out there: if someone chooses a chosen, that is now your game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You get the chosen in Monster of the Week too. If you get the chosen, it becomes about the chosen. Like the whole game does. So it's keep that in mind. Cool. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
But thanks for your feedback. That really did help me a great deal. So that's awesome. I think bouncing ideas off people who may not even be in your group can really help you fine tune a thing.
Yeah.
And I hope to run this thing at Origins. I'm hopeful that maybe some people will be interested in that. So I can run it some more.
Well, almost
That's
certainly
cool.
after this goes up, right? Somebody will be interested in it. So
do you, if you're running it again, do you think the Monster Hearts experience maps well enough to Kmart that this is something you can just Jason again and run over and over again?
Well, I'm always inspired by Jason. So if I can run this over and over again, really, my plan is to just run this and Lady Blackbird for the rest of my life.
At least I wrote the scenarios I do over and over again. So not going to the John Harper's Pirate King for the 19th time. So
I went to that Attention Kmart Shoppers page you linked, and good Lord, there's like 60 of those things. How long are these? This is crazy.
Sorry, highlight of the game for just like this amazing moment of kismet is when the queen decides to hit on the boss's daughter, and all of a sudden Wilson Phillips comes on in the background. Yes. And I looked totally out of character. I looked at all the players, and I said, Tawny was the name of the store manager's daughter. I looked at all of them and I said, Tawny's favorite song will be this song for the next year.
Great.
Just hold on, Tawny. Awesome. That sounds really great, actually. That's awesome. Cool. Tell us real quickly about your World of Dungeons thing, Steve. We just talked about last week, so I want to...
Right. We have talked about World of Dungeons, but as I mentioned, I wanted to use World of Dungeons to introduce my friend and his kids to role-playing games, and I did that yesterday. was using Marshall Miller's dungeon starter called The Escape,
which is basically...
I love that one.
Yeah, it's like a jailbreak during a zombie invasion, basically. Or, yeah, that's about right. So we sat down and created characters. We had very little time because this was a very impromptu get-together. After character creation, we only had like an hour or so to play, so we didn't get too far through it. And I should say, after character creation, then dinner arrived, we ate dinner, and one of the kids who's more prone to getting distracted got distracted and just...
He was over it.
We had a very, very silent wizard who ultimately didn't contribute anything. Just kind of running around. But it was a lot of fun, and the kid who did play took to it really well. We kept things very simple. We basically just got through the escape from the jail part of things and have left off with them faced with, a city of screaming people being, hounded by the living dead. I really enjoyed the just default, if you roll a 12 plus, you get a double extra super success. And you get that sometimes with advanced PBTA moves, which will pop up sometimes.
Yeah, Monster of the Week has that.
Yeah. I saw that come up 3 times, I think, in our short session. And it was always a nice excuse to give them a, fun little bonus. I just thought that was fun.
Nice.
Favorite bits. We had a ranger, a wizard, and a thief. And when the youngest kid was creating the wizard, I think he decided to name his wizard something just very standard. And without realizing who he was talking to, I think he decided to name his wizard Steve. And then immediately realized, oh, that's you. Right. And so just went with it. Wrote down Steve DeWiz on a little, name tent. And at a certain point, I was asking him to describe his character, and I'm like, "Oh, does your wizard have a beard?" And he goes, "Yeah, he's you."
I love it.
Another favorite bit, the older kid was they had broken him out of a jail cell. They'd broken into prison to break him out of prison. But there was this prehistoric old man who'd been locked up for probably years, who brought his little jail cup that he'd get water in, his metal cup, over to the bars and was clanging it against them, begging them to let him out. And they didn't have a lockpick because what they had broken in their, initial attempt to get the thief out. I'm like, well, this guy's going to be a problem unless you find a way to take care of him. And so one of the characters had 1 silver piece left after buying all their equipment. The older kid's like, okay, look, if you be quiet, oh, you know what? Here's 1 silver piece. In exchange for your cup, I'll buy it for 1 silver. And the old man's like, oh, and he rolled a 12 plus, I think. And I was like, yeah, okay, he's into it. He'll take your silver and bite it and make sure it's real. I don't think that actually works with silver. And then hand you his filthy cup, which is now, of course, a thing the kid writes on his character sheet, and it's a distraction to chuck beyond a guard or whatever. I just thought that was a fun little bit of problem solving. I'll pay you for it. Yeah. Oh. And then once he did get keys, he came back and let the guy out. A thief with a heart of gold. All right, way to go. And then my last favorite bit comes from Marshall Miller's Dungeon Starter. Let me pull up the text here. On another 12 plus, I was deciding he, while looting a chest, was finding something extra, and I was going through the suggested magical items or interesting items that you can find during the Dungeon Starter here, and came across one I had to include, of course. I'm just going to read out the full text here. Dwarf egg. Dwarf eggs are widely known to bring good fortune, protection, and cure baldness. Just don't leave it near the hearth. It's a rock.
Nice. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
No, I just had a lot of fun. Looking forward to more.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I just want to wrap up this segment with Dialect by Catherine Himes, and I'm going to fuck this name up, so I apologize, Hakan, but Hakan Sealioglu, I think. Anyway, it was great. So this is a playtest. Some of what I'm about to say might change in the ultimate version of the game. In fact, I'm led to believe we were the first outside playtest group to play it. And
cool.
It was really neat, truly unlike anything I've ever played before. It was so fresh and so different. The idea behind Dialect, and I'm lifting this directly from their website, it's a game about a community in isolation. In our game, we were a colony on Mars that had been cut off from Earth. So it's about a community in isolation and how its language evolves as they face challenges, establish values, and contrast themselves with the society they left behind. The game starts off, you make some characters and come up with some different aspects of your community through which we kind of explore the developing language of the community. And each turn, those aspects get matched up with an element that I gather comes from a deck of cards. Hakan was running the playtest and he had these cards, and so he was doing it. The cards, they represent a concept within the community that we need to make up a word for. Okay, so here's an example. One of our aspects was we had a religious aspect that was tied to how we gathered electricity for our colony. So we had these guys who would go to the surface. We were a subterranean colony, and we had these guys who would go to the surface and collect, they would turn on these like devices and stay with them, and that would help, collect the sun's energy to make electricity. And they kind of became sort of a religious figures within the community. They took on sort of a religious role. So that was one of our aspects. And the card that was drawn that we chose to use was money. And so what you do is you have a little conversation about like what the word is going to be that stands for money and how it connects up with that aspect of the community. And you have to kind of explain, you have a discussion about it, but you're basically trying to explain like, okay, this is why we call this what we call it. And so our word for money was currents. I wanted to go with joules, Joules, but I got downvoted on that. But people thought that was a little too on the nose. We went with currents, so that was pretty cool. Another example, one of our aspects was
currents isn't on the nose.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess it was slightly less. I don't know. Another example was one of our aspects was storytelling. So my character was basically pretending like we were still connected to Earth, like we still had communications with Earth. And so he would go around just making up fake stories about what's going on at Earth just to keep people's spirits up.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, just to kind of keep their spirits up, He would kind of make up stuff. And a lot of people even knew he was doing it, but it was just kind of a thing to pass the time, We had to connect up storytelling with sadness. So we had to make a word for sadness. And we chose to make the word like singing or a song. That's what sadness was. And so you might express it, my heart sings. And it meant I'm sad, right? Instead of, the way we might normally use a phrase like that, in real life. So that was just a couple of examples. There's a bunch of them get made throughout the course of it. That process of creating the word and creating the language is so fucking cool. It's just really neat. Anyway, once you have your word, you have a short scene in which you have a couple of characters have a conversation in which they have to use the word, and they can also use any other words that get established in the conversation. The community eventually goes through a couple of big shifts that change up the aspects a little bit. Eventually, at the end, I don't know if this is for every community, but in ours, at the end, Earth reestablished contact with us and kind of found us like in this very, very changed state, like where we spoke differently now, and we have different values and stuff than when we left. And so like that conflict was really interesting, and the way that the conflict between like our new language and their language was really interesting, the way it came out in play. It was super, super fascinating. Everyone loved it across the board. Everybody was really, really blown away by how great it was. It was really striking how much you internalize those words. We were all kind of joking on G Plus the next day about like how we've been thinking about those words. We still kind of have attached meaning to these words, because it gets so internalized because you start using them in these conversations in the game. It was really neat. I was really, really into it. We each had some feedback for the playtest. My only bit of feedback was I would have liked a little bit more like personal narrative of the characters rather than a sort of bigger picture community narrative. But it was a minor quibble at best, though, because it was really, really enjoyable.
Is it designed to be a one-shot?
Yes.
Oh, it's really impressive that you can get through something like that and come away feeling like that from just a one-shot.
It's super elegant. The setup process is a really, really tight question-based setup process where you just ask certain questions about the community and you kind of decide upon them as a group. Around the table, people are responsible for providing different, aspects and elements or aspects of the game. It worked out pretty tightly. I mean, we finished a whole game and it was less than 3 hours, so it was pretty solid. It's worth keeping in mind that the scenes that you have where you have to have the conversation with the word, those are meant to be really, really brief, like 2 or 3 sentences between you and a person, like just a little short snatch of conversation, okay. Right? Like really, really short. We would kind of let ours go a little longer just because it was me, David, who else was in that game? Eric, and this is me, David, Eric. Oh, and then Hakan played as well. And me and David especially, like, we were inclined to like have our conversations go a little longer, right? Because we're so used to playing games with each other. So we did our best to keep this, our scenes brief. But they're supposed to be pretty brief and punchy. But it was great, really, really good. The characters, even though we didn't get to develop the characters too much, it was just enough because you understood your character through these pre-established aspects of the community. So even though the story was mostly about the community, your characters kind of echoed it pretty well, and there was a nice connection there.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, it was great. People should look out for it.
This is a play test, so I'm guessing there's no concrete plans for Kickstarter release.
I don't know what the plans are. We'll put a link to their website because they have some information about it on the website. But I can't wait when they get ready to take the next steps for it because it was really cool.
One of my favorite parts of Questlandia was the language creation.
Yeah, same.
So I imagine that this would be pretty fun here too.
It's neat. I mean, it doesn't overstay its welcome, which I think is important. It's a game that's designed to be a one-shot, and I think the type of story you're telling probably wouldn't hold up for much longer, honestly. It's because it's not super character-driven. It's really, really about just looking at the story arc of this community as a whole, almost like Quiet Year, right? And it does what it's supposed to do in a really clean, elegant way. And it makes you feel something different. You experience something genuinely different in this space, which doesn't happen very often.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's all I got to say about it. Let's go to community feedback. All right, it's time for community feedback. Steve.
So this week on our community, on our G Plus page, we had a post from Brett Gillen talking about the Final Girl and basically the Gauntlet's impact on the Final Girl. Let me explain. Probably right before Brett Gillen stopped selling the Final Girl online, the Gauntlet introduced me to it, and I had a ton of fun and immediately went out, I think that night, like I got home and bought myself a copy. And it was like a week later or something, I think, that Brett Gillen took it offline. Very shortly thereafter, we started up the podcast and started talking about the Final Girl because it's a ton of fun. Brett Gillen's talking about how basically he was having some personal issues that caused him to not want to go through the hassle of dealing with sales. Because I think he was running it on the Unstore.
Yeah,
so it was not just
Unstore,
totally automated where you just sort of get the money from you put it up once and then get the money from the sales, like or at least how I imagine drive-thru works. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong. He's talking about how we've sort of been, driving buzz about this game at an awkward, unfortunate time to be driving buzz for it, namely immediately after he took it down. And how he's finally, started seeing people talk about, quote, the long-celebrated Final Girl, right? And
right,
has said that he thinks that we are sort of the lengthy celebrators. Is that a word? Celebrators? Celebrants.
Oh, yeah, celebrants, yeah.
He's sort of, thanking mostly thanking, I think, us for being proponents of the game and for being people who, play and love the game and encourage other people to do the same.
I think it's fantastic that games can find a home, and that's one of the things I like the most about the Gauntlet is that we aren't just playing the same old games. We try out new stuff and we give congrats to games that deserve some love. So that it's great. I'm really glad you picked this out, Steve. It made me excited to see that post.
I was really happy to see it. It was really nice of him to put that up there. It felt nice to hear him say that, and because I really like his game, and I think it's a game that, like you said, Rich, it's great when games can find an audience.
And I also wanted to use this as an excuse to say that I hope, because I remember at the time we would talk about the Final Girl and about how fun it is and about how it's not available anymore. And I remember at least one or two times saying that Brett Gillen hates money.
Yeah, we were kind of shitty about it. I know we were.
Yeah, I really hope that I did not cause Brett Gillen to feel terrible because I really love his game and he seems like a cool guy. I hope he understands that it wasn't like, screw you, your game's not available. Especially since, whatever, I got mine. Who cares about anybody else? Yeah, I don't know. I felt at least crappy enough that I wanted to bring it up.
I'm glad the game's back up for sale. I'm glad that he's kind of worked through, whatever he needed to work through to get it up there, and I have nothing but positive, happy feelings about it. So
yeah, and it's on sale at drive-thru where he will have, I at least think, less hassle to deal with. He won't have to do fulfillment himself.
No, it's cool. It's awesome. I think it's great. And we were kind of teasing him on that thread about how he should kickstart it. I would totally back a Kickstarter of the Final Girl.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love a physical copy at some point.
Physical copy, a bunch of new settings. Maybe we just have Jason write a whole chapter of all the 5 or 6 settings you've used. Or did you make one and you just reskinned it every time?
No, please. There's like 100 different. We've done.
Oh, yeah.
I know, you guys have run it so much, you could probably do...
We've even hacked it. We've even hacked the rules to be about other things, you know?
That's awesome.
Yeah. Brett seems like a cool guy. It was a super nice post, and I was really happy to see it. It was nice to see. Cool. I should give a quick shout out to the other podcast, one of our other podcasts, Discern Realities. We have a contest going on right now where you can win a $25 gift card to either Amazon or Drive-Thru. If you want to participate in that contest, it's about making a custom move. It's a custom move contest, location-based custom move contest. Go find the posts for DR so you can get in on that contest if that's something you might want to participate in. Just want to spread a little bit of bandwidth on that. So. All right, well, that was our show, listeners. If you want to get in touch with us, I recommend you go to our website, gauntlet-rpg.com, where you can find links to all of our different things, including our G Plus community, our meetups where we run games, and our other podcasts, Plus One Forward, a podcast powered by the apocalypse, and Discern Realities. The newest episode of Plus One Forward is going to be out by the time this goes up, and it features Mark Diaz-Truman talking about urban shadows. Right, Rich?
Yes, Mark Diaz-Truman is so good.
He's good. Yeah, he's good. We had him on. Yeah. We had him on.
He was a lot of fun.
Episode 42 or something on this one. Yeah, he's great. So go check out the website. Go join our community. Find us on Twitter. I'm back to just tweeting once a week, so I'm backsliding on that. So please go follow me so I have a reason to tweet more. It's at Twitter. It's not at Twitter. It's at Gauntlet RPG. That's all I've got. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
You betcha.
All right, thanks, listeners.
Just spaced on what he played, so Rich will think.
Just say an animal, a marmot.
A marmot? No. Damn it!
A marmot that solves mysteries.
You forgot what you played, Rich?
Shut up! Crap.
A capybara.
What made it really interesting?
I'm sorry, Rich. Yeah, it was a lot like The Warren. What did I play?
Played a rabbit. Yeah, just first.
What did I play? God.